Good morning, sports fans. Well, we've got a problem. It's bloody hot out today. Got the key on. The other windows will go down just fine. But let's look at the passenger front. Nothing. And that applies even if I use the switch on the door. At times I've noticed the glass moves just a bump, and so I think it's getting power. And so we'll check for voltage drop, but I think it's going to be down to either the regulator or probably the motor. Let's fix it.
So high I'm hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right.
Okay, there's the motor right there. So now I'm going to peel off this plastic. Now this plastic is actually very important, so you don't want to tear it. You have to replace it. It's a good vapor barrier that prevents moisture and rust from accumulating inside, damaging electronic parts. So here's our motor here. All right, let me show you what I've done here. I've back probed the connector. When we hit the window up and down switch, I should get 12 volts across that between those two. Nothing, either way. So either my connection in the back here is bad, or we're not getting power to the unit. That's interesting. Now to verify that finding, I'm going to undo this connector here. I think I just pry down here and pull. There we are. Okay, so I've front probed this connector. And now, watch what happens when I flick the switch. Going one way and going the other way. So I get 11 volts either way with the opposite polarity. So that appears right. So evidently my first test was bad because I didn't back probe it enough to get a good contact. So we haven't done an adequate voltage drop test here yet. Okay, what I've done here is I've front probed the connector with tiny wires. I've got a 4 amp headlight, and we're going to flick it on and just see if those wires are able to carry current. And we get good lighting there, good lighting there. So it's looking increasingly like the motor is getting adequate power, but it's just not moving. And so I've got the ohmmeter hooked up here, and we've got 2.2 ohms, but watch what happens when I move the leads. It bounces all over the place. So that's not very reliable. Now let's apply power to it directly with the power probe and just see what happens. So I've got the power probe hooked up to it, and just out of interest I've got an inductive ammeter set up, and let me apply power, and the ammeter is showing no current, so we're applying 10 volts directly across that and we're not getting any current. And I've done that the opposite way as well, and I get the same result. So this motor is bad.
Let's talk about options. For this vehicle you can buy the motor and the regulator separately, and at this point I don't know if the regulator cables are okay. Let's look at the full assembly. The OEM GM assembly is about $130 US plus shipping, and the OEM motor by itself is a little over 40. If I go with an aftermarket AC Delco regulator assembly, I'm looking at 65 plus shipping, which is reasonable. There are a few things here that favor swapping both at the same time. First, sticking hardware is one of the most common causes of motor death. It turns out that when the rotor is frozen, there is no back EMF to limit current flow, so it draws far more current and heat than the tiny wires inside the windings can tolerate. When we get the regulator off, we may find a problem with the cables, and I don't want to wait for more parts and pay for extra shipping. And in this case, there's a third issue in that with the motor frozen in the completely up position, I can't get at the glass pinch bolts to remove the assembly. So I may have to cut a cable to get that glass down to a point where I can remove the regulator. So in this case, I'll get the aftermarket AC Delco option as a full assembly.
Motor's held on with screws, not rivets. That's nice. 10 millimeter. All right, we need to get this blue tab off. These usually just pry off. There, and then this thing comes up, and out. Once this blue retaining hook is out and this is loose and this bolt is out, you can just slide this forward. It comes undone. There's 3 hooks here, all pointing that way. At this point, we can take the plastic off. So I want to try and get this glass down. I'm just going to try and tap on the glass, tap on the motor and see if, I've got the motor pressed, and see if I can't get the glass moving one last time. Aha! 10 millimeters. So I'm told that some regulators have a lift assist spring that holds things into place and you need to bolt those together. I don't see any evidence of such a spring here. There's a spring on this, but that's, I think, is all part of the same process. So I'm just going to undo these 6 bolts. Now there are little hooks here, one there and one there. And as it lift the regulator up, it'll come clear of those hooks and I'll be able to wiggle it out. Let's see how that goes. That one's free. There we are. So I've loosened these 2 pinch plates for the glass. The bolts are still captive, but the glass should be able to easily slip in if I could get it in the right spot. So we've had the glass taped up to a nice spot where I can get at bolts, and now I need to raise the regulator up into the glass on both sides here. So I'm just going to bump the motor and slide it up here. There we are. And then now I'll get at those bolts and do those bolts up. So the bolts are loosely tied up. Now I'm just going to take it right through, make sure there's no obstruction. And I'm just using a little dry lube on the track itself. Okay, I found that these spring clips here, there's 2 of them here. If you do this in the wrong order, it won't seem quite right. So you want to take these out of this end and put them in the other. Let's see if I can focus. That one doesn't want to come. There. See how they go like that? And then this goes in here like so. There. Just get that jammed down in there. Here we are. I'm going to put this in like so. There. Now, one thing I found about these Chevys is this lock panel, the red thing goes to the back, and I found it easiest to put this in at the very end. This is locked, that's unlocked, and that probe needs to go into that hole there. So let's see how we work it here. All right, let's look at this motor. These DC brushed motors are pretty much the same. They have a permanent magnet stator. You can see the magnets in there, 2 of them. No wires on the outside on the stator. And then this is the armature, the part that spins. This is the commutator where the brushes ride. And then these are the brushes right here. Here's one and the other. And the weak point on a brush motor is always going to be the brushes. And there is certainly some wear there. But there is plenty of brush space left. So I don't think we can say it's all related to worn brushes. But look at the commutator here. Normally there should be a nice gap like this between each of the poles. And we've got material that's deposited between them, probably jumping the gap between them. And so that's going to reduce the efficiency of the motor with all this debris that's put onto the commutator. All right, so that's it. It's really a lot simpler than you think. This is well within the scope of most DIY mechanics. The thing that I think some people might feel a little intimidated by is the electrical testing, and that's a lot simpler than it looks. What you want to do is you want to show that there's power and ground right at the connector where the motor plugs in. And then secondly, you want to find some way of getting electrons moving so that if there is some upstream or downstream resistance, you'll detect that. The way I did that was with the light bulb, but you could use the motor itself or some other source of resistance. So if this video helped you out and you want to see more of them, then hit like or subscribe. I'd love to hear feedback. Thanks for watching.